The Cleveland Browns have found their path to success. It may not be perfect, it may not be as flashy as they originally thought it would be, but it's there, and head coach Freddie Kitchens has shown over the last 3 weeks that he now understands how to make Baker Mayfield successful. When I first started working on this week's episode, I set out to answer 3 main questions for myself. Why were Mayfield's numbers so horrendous for the first half of the season? Why did they suddenly get better over the last month? And are the underlying problems that caused those wild swings fixable in the long term? To answer all of those questions about the enigma that are the 2019 Browns, though, I first had to look at the even bigger enigma that was the 2018 Browns, because all of their struggles and all of their successes this year pretty closely mirrored those of last year. For starters, in 2018 up through Week 8 when Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley were still running the show, Mayfield's production was lackluster at best. 58% completion, 6.6 yards per attempt, only 8 touchdowns, 6 picks, and a staggeringly high 20 sacks. Nothing was working, but then Freddie Kitchens took the offense over in Week 9 when Greg Williams was promoted to interim head coach, and everything changed for the better. From then on out, with a pretty comparable number of attempts, he passed at nearly a 70% clip, he jumped up to 8.6 yards per attempt, he threw 19 touchdowns in the remaining 8 games, and he only took 5 more sacks the entire rest of the season, which was best in the league among starting quarterbacks. He wasn't just more efficient, he was way more efficient, and a huge part of that jump in production was because of the change in philosophy brought on by Freddie Kitchens. Under Hugh and Haley, the Browns tried to be a more vertical offense, and they strayed away from the so-called safer passing concepts that help protect young quarterbacks, meaning they were not using a lot of hard play action fakes from under center, and when they were in the shotgun, they were not using a whole lot of RPOs or one-step drop passing concepts that get the ball out quick. In fact, under Haley, Mayfield only threw the ball either from under center or from a quick drop in the shotgun 36.9% of the time, which is pretty low. When Kitchens took over, however, he recognized that those quick passing concepts and those hard play action fakes are where Baker thrives the most, so he upped their usage to just over 40%, and his overall efficiency skyrocketed as a result. Once the Browns embraced Mayfield's RPO and play action comfort zone, and remember when he was at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, they ran play action nearly 46% of the time, their offense took a huge leap, and the team itself took a huge leap. Cleveland won 5 of their last 8 games, with all 3 of those losses coming to eventual playoff teams like Houston, KC, and Baltimore, and Mayfield performed so well under this philosophy that Kitchens was awarded the head coaching job over Greg Williams. Fast forward to the 2019 offseason, Kitchens' first full offseason in the big chair, and everything was going great. The blueprint for Baker's success had been laid out, things were looking up for his sophomore season, and the organization sensed that it was time to strike while the iron was hot, so they resolved to go all in for 2019 and try to make a push for a Super Bowl with a young, cheap quarterback like so many other teams had done. They traded for Odell Beckham, they signed Kareem Hunt, and they were still getting David Njoku and Nick Chubb back for their second years with Mayfield as well. And all of a sudden, the Browns looked to have the most intimidatingly explosive group of skill position talent in the entire NFL. Straight up, they were loaded, and Kitchens knew it. In fact, he was so aware of how much talent he had at his disposal that, in my opinion, he kind of fell for the hype for his own team and let it change his whole offensive philosophy again over the course of the summer leading into the season. In the time between Cleveland's regular season finale in December and their season debut in September, that quick passing, ball control offense that prioritized efficiency above everything became once again a flashy, vertical, chuck-it-deep carbon copy of the Todd Haley offense that brought out the worst in Mayfield in the first place. He was forced to hold the ball longer, receivers ran deeper routes on average so they were coming open later, and the offensive line was exposed to their biggest weakness by far, holding up in one-on-ones in pass protection. It was like one big deja vu moment for Kitchens, like he was rewinding the clock on all of the good that he had done for no reason. And unfortunately for Mayfield, it took all the way until week 10 of this year, the exact same moment in the season as last year, for Kitchens to make the exact same adjustments a second time. Here are some numbers to illustrate all of the points I'm about to back up in our tape study, and it's important to be aware of these numbers going into it. I get that it's a lot to absorb, but just trust me, we're going to be getting pretty fucking deep in the weeds here later in the show, so you gotta know all this stuff to get some context. Oh, and by the way, my source for all of these numbers, in case you're wondering if I'm just making it all up, is a fantastic service that I cannot recommend enough called Sports Info Solutions. They're like a supercharged version of Pro Football Focus that has an incredible amount of data charted, tons of filters. I mean, you can sort from everything from coverages to drop depth, field position, time, situation, like even types of routes ran. It's the best tool I've ever used, and I'm going to link them in the description so you can check them out yourself because you can learn a lot from all the information they provide. But with that being said, these are the numbers that I was able to parse out from SIS's charts. In 2019, when Baker Mayfield is in the shotgun and he throws either from a one-step drop that gets the ball out immediately or an RPO that gets the ball out equally fast, he completes 77.1% of his passes. He throws for 7.1 yards per attempt. He's got a positive touchdown to interception ratio at 5-4. 3 of those 4 picks were off of deflections, by the way, and he's only taken 2 sacks. On all of the other throws out of shotgun, meaning 3-step drops, 5-step drops, designed rollouts, you name it, anything that's not a quick throw, he is passing at less than 53%. His YPA drops to 6.7. He has a negative touchdown to interception ratio, and he's taken an incredibly high 20 sacks. Those 2 sets of numbers are staggeringly different, but it doesn't stop there. When Mayfield is under center and he is passing off of a hard play-action fake, he completes 65.5% of those passes, most of which are deep down the field. He averages 10.5 yards per attempt, which is insanely good. He's thrown 4 TDs, 0 picks, and he's only taken 4 sacks. From under center on non-play action passes, though, meaning everything else, he completes only 42% of them. His YPA is only 4.3. He's thrown no touchdowns, but still tossed 3 picks. Again, the numbers are a stark contrast to one another, and they illustrate one more time that Mayfield has a clear comfort zone within this system. He succeeds on plays that, by design, protect him from his own offensive line deficiencies, and if you move away from that comfort zone and ask him or his offensive line to do more than that, his productivity plummets. Now, in the first 9 weeks of the season, again, this is important to know, the Browns utilized those quick passing or hard play action concepts only 36.7% of the time, roughly the exact same number that we saw from Todd Haley last year before he got fired. The Browns went 2-6 in that span, and they had a truly anemic offense that could not find any sustained success. It was awful to watch. In their last 3 games, however, which were all wins against Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Miami, and 2 of those defenses are in the top 6 in the entire league, by the way, they used quick passing and play action concepts nearly 64% of the time. They went all in on ball control, they ran it down people's throats and got it out quick in the passing game, and they only held the ball and threw deep when they coupled it with a play-action fake from under center. And that mentality and overall philosophy worked in every single game. We just went over how his efficiency skyrocketed earlier in the episode, and the Browns as a team looked flat out better than at any other point this season. In fact, there is a clear correlation between emphasizing ball control and winning games for this team. In all of their combined wins, Mayfield's taken a total of 176 dropbacks, and 52.3% of those were either in the quick game or hard play action. In all of their combined losses, he took 225 total dropbacks, and only 37.3% were in the quick game or hard play action. Every single number that I can find over the last 2 seasons backs this correlation up, that Baker Mayfield is only comfortable in that style of offense, and somehow the Browns didn't realize this until honestly too late into the season for 2 consecutive years in a row, which is unfortunate for Mayfield, obviously. But at least there is data now that we can look at, and at least all of that data and the supporting film can give us answers to our first 2 questions that we laid out at the top of this episode. Why did Baker struggle, and why did he suddenly get better? He struggled because Freddie Kitchens tried to use his new weapons in a way that didn't fit his quarterback, and he called a lot of shitty plays as a result. And he got better because Kitchens just stopped calling those shitty plays. It's kind of that simple. But what isn't simple is how we can answer the third question that I began with. Why did Baker Mayfield struggle to execute those vertical concepts in the first place, and were his struggles something that Kitchens or Browns fans should be worried about going forward if he cannot adequately execute a pretty big section of the playbook? That mystery is the tricky part in all of this, and it's the part that probably took me the longest to figure out too, because while a lot of what's wrong with Baker can be hidden by better play calling, that doesn't exactly make his problems go away or improve them in the slightest. To me, there are four main things that Kitchens needs to take into account both for the rest of this season and for 2020 and beyond as he retools his offense around Mayfield's issues. 1. Drop depth, meaning how deep Baker gets in the pocket when he takes a 3-step, 5-step, or 7-step drop. 2. Drop timing, meaning how long it takes him to finish his drop on average. 3. Route timing and distribution, meaning how he can better design route concepts to come open in sync with Baker's unique drop timing. And 4. Psychologically speaking, Kitchens needs to understand how Baker responds to different kinds of pressure in relation to his drop depth, drop timing, and route distributions. Now, I know that all sounds like a lot, so let's just start with something simple like drop depth, and we'll go from there, because depth is probably the biggest thing that Kitchens needs to game plan around. Baker's style of footwork in his drops, regardless of how deep that drop is called a punch drop. He starts with his left foot back as a right-handed quarterback, and once he gets the ball, he always takes what's called a punch step with that left foot before opening up his right hip to begin his normal drop footwork. So really, when you think about it, because of that extra punch step, a 3-step drop is actually a 4-step drop for him, and a 5-step drop is actually a 6-step drop, and so on and so forth. What that punch step does is give Baker more depth in the pocket, which he prefers just as a comfort zone kind of thing. All quarterbacks have slightly different footwork that they've been using for a long time, that they have a comfort level with. Some like to have their feet square and open up from that stance. Some like their right foot back, some like the left foot back for a punch drop. It's all personal preference. Baker likes that left foot back to give him that extra depth and to give him a little bit of extra room between him and the front of the pocket as it collapses inward. The downside to giving himself more space from interior pressure, though, is that because he's deeper in the pocket, the rush angles for edge rushers are way easier for them to win on because they don't have to bend as sharply around the corner. And since it takes him longer to hit the back of his drop because he's taking an extra step, that translates to him holding the ball longer against edge rushers that already have an easier time getting to him at such a deep angle. So in theory, while he may be safer from immediate interior pressure collapsing the pocket, he's a hell of a lot more vulnerable to edge pressure as a trade-off. Contrast this with Tom Brady, who does not use a punch step, and he tends to be higher up in the pocket by using what's called a quick step instead. That means his right foot is back before he takes the snap, not his left foot, so that he can then open up that right hip as he catches the ball, get into his cross step even faster, and then of course gain depth even faster still on that 3rd, 4th, and 5th step, or whatever his drop is on that play. Because he not only eliminated that punch step, but also leads with that right foot back on the quick step, he is routinely able to finish his drop faster than Mayfield so that he can get the ball out. And he's also a yard or sometimes even 2 or 3 yards higher in the pocket than Baker on average, so he's more insulated from the angles of speed rushers off the edges. So overall, his process and mechanics are quicker and much harder for defensive lines to disrupt. Of course, it's not a perfect philosophy because being higher in the pocket does have the drawback of bringing him closer to the line of scrimmage, so immediate interior pressure can cause some problems, and it certainly caused problems for Brady in the past, but because he finishes that drop so fast and gets rid of the ball equally quickly, usually he's able to compensate for his lack of depth and be a really tough quarterback to sack. All of that being said though, at this point after 2 years, Freddie Kitchens has got to know all of this. He needs to know how his quarterback likes to drop in the pocket, he needs to know how that affects protection angles, and how that affects the timing of his quarterback releasing the ball. I mean, routinely we see Baker finish his 3-step drop sometimes half a second or even 0.6 seconds slower than Brady's quick step, which is a lot relatively speaking. So there's a ton of data he can look at that shows that his quarterback's mechanical process is slow. That's just how it is, but in the absence of completely retooling Baker's footwork, which I do not recommend because that could be disastrous and totally throw him off forever, Kitchens needs to recognize all of this data and design his protections with these numbers in mind. Just like, and I'll say it one more time, the Patriots do with Tom Brady. In New England, when they run the 5-step passing game out of the shotgun and Tom is 10 or 11 yards deep in the pocket sometimes, it's Chip City over there all day, every day. They know their offensive tackles cannot hold up to that kind of crazy deep rushing angle, so pretty much every time this drop is called, they don't ask them to hold up alone in protection. They give them chips to both sides to slow down the edge rushers and give those tackles more time to get depth as Tom gets depth. Belichick and McDaniels know what their players are capable of, and they know what they're not capable of, and they go out of their way to set them up for success while hiding their weaknesses. In Cleveland, though, at least for most of this season, when they called for a 5-step concept in the shotgun, they didn't give their tackles chip help on both sides, and instead they took their chances with these tackles trying to block edge rushers at damn near impossible angles that they had no shot at succeeding at, and the result was Baker constantly running for his life and taking huge hits over and over again. It was not fair to anyone on that Browns offense to design their system like that, especially with a quarterback that already dropped deeper than most other QBs to begin with. And I 100% blame Kitchens for not being aware enough about how he designed his protections for the first 9 weeks of the season. The good news, though, if there is a silver lining to get from this, is that Kitchens has not called a single 5-step drop out of the shotgun in 2 of Cleveland's last 3 games, probably because he recognized that every time he does it, Baker gets lit up, but hey, at least he's learning. That's something positive we can take away from it. I would say the same notion holds true for QB drop timing and route timing as well. Again, because of that punch step from Mayfield, even a 3-step or a 5-step drop takes significantly longer to actually complete, which means Baker takes longer to get his feet set and ready to throw from the top of that drop. That delay, if you will, affects route timing. It affects the timing of how quickly Baker reads coverages, and it changes the kind of concepts you can dial up from even a simple 3-step drop. Late feet equals late eyes, which equals late throws, and late throws in the NFL are usually a death sentence. Take this sack against Denver a few weeks ago from empty when they dialed up another 5-step drop. Baker was trying to hold the free safety down the middle of the field with his eyes as he dropped so that the safety would bracket the slice route and leave the front side seam ideally running uncovered down the field, and that in itself was a good decision by Baker to try to hold him there. But because of that punch step, his 5-step drop takes nearly 2.9 seconds for him to get set and to move his eyes to that seam route. By the time he got there and saw that this nickel corner had carried the route and that it was not open, we're talking 3 full seconds that this left tackle had to hold up against a really deep rush angle with no help. Not only are these drops deep, they take forever to finish, which slows down Baker's eyes, which means sometimes he doesn't have time to hitch and reset to hit a check down. It's first read or nothing, and that gets him hit a lot when the first read isn't there. Again, there's nothing that Freddie Kitchens can really do about this. That's just how Baker is mechanically, and at this point in his stage of development, you kind of got to just ride with that and adjust. But part of that adjustment is not calling these deep drops anymore because they take way too damn long with his footwork. As a coach, your job is to protect Baker from himself. If you make him drop in the 3-step game, or God forbid the 5 or 7-step game, and you give him no extra protection while doing so, everything that happens after that is your fault. Plain and simple. That's on the coach. Now, that note also ties into ultimately what I think is a very important coaching point when we talk about how to coach Baker Mayfield and how to make him successful. Freddie Kitchens needs to understand from this point forward the psychology of his quarterback. He needs to be aware of how Mayfield responds to pressure, and he needs to call concepts that cater to those instincts. For instance, Baker, like I said, does not like sitting inside of a tight pocket early in a play. He will retreat with that punch step, he'll get a lot of depth, and he'll drift backwards or left and right to put as much space as he can between him and the front of the pocket. And he does this so that he can read coverages and routes from a distance without a whole lot of bodies in his face. To me, this preference is because of his height more than anything else, and this is not a criticism, mind you, it's just an observation of how Baker prefers to read coverages from within his comfort zone. He likes to be deep in the pocket because as a shorter quarterback, the deeper you are, the easier it is to see through those windows between your own offensive linemen that are all bigger than you. It's a visual perspective trick, if you will. If you want to see a quick demonstration with your own eyes, take a coffee cup or any other object really, hold it away from you in front of a window, see how much of that window it covers up, and then move it 15 to 20% closer and look at how much more of that window it covers up. That's the same idea with drop depth, helping to give easier field vision to Mayfield from within that pocket. Now, because Baker's vision can get compromised by things really tight in his face because of his height again, instinctively he hates interior pressure and it will distract him like nothing else on this earth. As soon as that flash of color of an opposing jersey gets too close, he is no longer looking down the field and he's looking to run and create more space between him and the rush. He does not like tight pockets. They frustrate the hell out of him. And that's part of the reason why he rolls out so much to his right. Because the second his spidey senses go off that the pocket is getting tighter, he bails out of there. He doesn't want his vision compromised, so he would rather be out of the pocket entirely with clear vision on a scramble drill than in a compressed pocket with obscured vision on whatever the hell the actual called route concept was. That is, again, just how he is in this stage of his career. That's how he plays the game. And Kitchens needs to be aware of that and cater to it in two very specific ways. For starters, Freddie needs to make sure that on every passing play there has to be one route built in that is moving laterally to Baker's right, or one that breaks open really late in the concept to Baker's right, like a deep comeback or something like that. There always needs to be a panic button on that right-hand boundary, so that inevitably when he does roll out, and he will roll out a lot to that side, there is somebody waiting there to get the ball. If they don't have any routes designed to go to that area of the field and he's rolling to that side and has nobody to even attempt to throw to, that's a wasted play in my opinion because he is so good off script when he's running to his right. Secondly, Kitchens also needs to emphasize that when they attack down the field on a deep passing concept, no matter what it is, it's never from shotgun and it's always got to be from a hard play action fake from under center. When they try to go deep from the gun, they are terrible. They get sacked, they throw picks, they stall their own drives. I mean, it's a mess because they cannot pass protect worth a damn. But when they're going from under center, giving a hard play action fake, it's bombs away all day and they've been tremendously successful. As I broke down earlier in this show, the numbers are fantastic to back that up. And the reason for that success is because play action helps to cater to the psychology of Baker Mayfield and how he reacts to pressure. When an offense is operating from under center, defensive lines are usually going to be less aggressive about shooting gaps and trying to get into the backfield on first and second down. Against shotgun, sure, yeah, they'll shoot gaps every time because most of the runs that you call out of shotgun will be some variation of inside zone or outside zone, and the best ways to stop a zone run is penetration into the backfield so that you can close down that front side lane quickly and force an early cutback into a pile of bodies. That's just how you stop that kind of run. It's defense 101. But when you're under center in an I formation, you can see any kind of run from that look. Zone, power, trap, duo, counter, anything. They can attack you downhill right up the gut all night long if they want to with some more physical styles of runs. So knowing that, defensive lines and linebackers will not try to penetrate and shoot gaps because shooting the wrong gap can put them at a severe disadvantage against power or trap or duo, and once you're out of position against those kinds of runs, you're screwed. So against that I formation, you'll see defensive linemen do what's called two-gapping instead. That is a more conservative technique, if you will, where they literally just stack on the block in front of them and play two gaps at once so that they don't get caught out of position. And usually they don't really make any effort to get into the backfield until after they read what the play is. The consequence of two-gapping, though, as you can imagine, is that if you're not shooting gaps into the backfield right off the snap, you're probably not going to put a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback. That's why those play-action fakes from under center give Baker so much space to work with. The whole defensive line is two-gapping because they don't want to get caught out of position against a backfield that contains Chubb and Hunt. They respect both of those guys way too much. So on a 7-step drop off a play fake here, there's literally nobody immediately in Baker's face to make him panic and run. There's no edge rusher that has a favorable angle on him either because these kinds of drops from under center do not put him as deep behind the line of scrimmage. And he's just comfortable for once. There's nobody immediately in front of him, there's nobody coming off the edge, he's clean, he's not being hurried, he has good field vision, and in that kind of, let's call it a manufactured pocket, he excels. It's the perfect kind of play call for him, and like I said, it plays right into what the Browns' strengths are as an offense. They can pound the rock with their exceptional running back duo to soften defenses up. They won't be exposing their weak offensive line to have to pass protect too much. And these deep shots also take advantage of the fact that they have two dynamic downfield threats in Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry that can both win their one-on-ones against almost any secondary. This right here is, in my opinion, the future of what this offense should be. And I hope they take all of this success and run with it because it's honestly the only thing that works for them. Now, if you're still with me over 20 minutes into this, congratulations, you made it a hell of a lot further than I thought you would, and you're allowed to take a bathroom break now if you need it, but I promise we're almost done, so just bear with me a little bit longer if you can, because there are a lot of lessons that we've learned today. 1, Freddie Kitchens made the exact same mistakes that Todd Haley did, and he temporarily fixed them the same way that he fixed Haley's mistakes 1 year ago. 2, the Browns are a better offense now than they were in the beginning of the season because of their willingness to change, or rather, Freddie's willingness to change. And 3, Baker Mayfield's, let's call it unique playing style, still has a lot of weaknesses that need to be worked on, and I think we're still a year or 2 away from seeing the best version of what he can be. At the start of this week, when I began charting those dreadful first 5 or 6 games of the season, honestly, I'll admit that I wanted Kitchens gone, because I thought he was going to ruin Baker Mayfield as a prospect. But as the week went on and I watched each subsequent game back to back to back, especially the most recent 3 games, I started to see an evolution. I saw a change in philosophy, a new direction, and a recommitment to what got Kitchens this job in the first place. It took him a long time, but he did get there eventually, and I think he deserves credit for that. Do I still have confidence in Kitchens long term, 2, 3, 4 years down the road? I don't know yet, but I do think that if he keeps this current trend up, and if he keeps evolving as a play caller before our very eyes to help make his young quarterback better, he deserves a chance to prove himself in the long term. Hell, I think the Browns as a whole deserve a chance to prove themselves. Maybe they fall flat on their face, maybe this all blows up and they have to start over again, but I kinda have a feeling that it won't blow up. After all of the work that I put into studying this team, I'm telling you, there's something there. I know there is. It's in the numbers and it's in the tape. There is a path to success right in front of them. I mean, we've seen glimpses of it throughout this entire season against some legitimately great teams, both in the wins and in the losses, so I know that path exists. They just have to trust that it's there. They have to trust that it will lead them to where they want to go. And every step that their coach and their quarterback take down that path from here on out, for better or for worse, they have to take those steps together. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode, and of course, thank you for being patient with me while the channel was suspended for this past week because of YouTube's new quote-unquote dangerous content policy. Those new rules have ended up screwing a lot of creators on the platform, myself included now, since I depend on brand deals for a huge chunk of my income as someone who's self-employed, so I kind of had to scramble to find new sponsorship for the entire rest of the season so that I could, actually pay my mortgage. And of course, what that led to was me reaching out to our friends over at Manscaped to see if they wanted to sponsor the show instead, because they sell the least dangerous product I can think of, razor blades. And naturally, they were like, sure, bro, we love your audience. They were good for us. Sign us back up. And, they stepped up huge for me. So they're back once again with that big 20% promo code that you guys have enjoyed before for all Film Room viewers. If you go check out Manscaped at the link below, they've got everything you can think of for male grooming. I've used and restocked on their stuff for well over a year now. They've got trimmers, safety razors that give you closer and cheaper shaves than normal disposables, deodorants, colognes, body washes, moisturizers. You name it, they got it. You can get any of those items individually. You can get them together at an even higher discount in what's called the Perfect Package 2.0. You can get replenishment plans that automatically restock you on things you run out of frequently, like that body wash I mentioned. It smells amazing, and I use it every day, so I run out of it a lot. It's just overall, it's a great company. They make a lot of great products. I have zero complaints with anything I've ever used from them. And if you're interested in checking out any of it, again, click that link in the description. And if you decide you want to buy anything, either for yourself for Black Friday or as a stocking stuffer for someone you love, use that promo code BrettK20 for 20% off your entire order, plus free shipping, plus 2 free gifts from Manscaped on the house. Again, thank you to Manscaped for helping out the channel in a really tough spot. They're a great bunch of guys over there, and I cannot recommend their company enough. They're awesome. As for me and channel news, like I said, obviously I'm unsuspended now, so I'm back to a regular posting schedule. That means we are back to new episodes coming out every single week, and ideally it's going to stay that way forever. So God willing, I'll see you guys next Friday for another episode of The Film Room, and hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you guys had a lot of really good turkey. Happy holidays, and I'll see you later.